Hi, this is Ram from Ram's Coding Camp, and welcome to another video. Today, we're going to be doing completing the square. So this is another form of factoring, but in this one, you don't really do it just to solve for x. I mean, it's kind of hard to do that once you actually factor it. You use this mainly to get something called a vertex, which when you're graphing a parabola, which is the graph of a quadratic function, the vertex is basically this point. Basically kind of in the middle of the whole parabola. So anyway, let's get started. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 3. And this one, you can't really factor it the normal way of doing like x and whatever this part is. Because when I do 3 and 1, there's no way to really get 2 because this is positive 3, so I can't put a negative here. So we have to factor this a whole different way. So the way I would do this is, in parentheses, I'd put x squared plus 2x. And from here, you have to find out the perfect square of x squared plus 2x plus whatever. So you basically have to find this, you divide 2x by, actually not 2x, just 2. So you divide 2 by 2, so you basically divide it in half. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and then you have to square this number. So 1 squared is 1. So that would be the number right here. And the reason is, when you do x, 1, 1, then you cross multiplication, you get x plus x, which is equal to 2x. So we get x squared plus 2x plus 1. But then after we get that, we can't just take a 1 out of thin air. So once you get that 1, you have to subtract it. And I'll put this in brackets. You don't really need the brackets in this problem or in this problem. But once you get into these ones, you actually need them. So, and then after the brackets, you have to add the plus 3. And in the next part, you could just do x plus 1 squared. And then we have the minus 1 plus 3. And then from here, we don't really need the brackets. Negative 1 plus 3 is just positive 2. So the answer would just be x plus 1 squared plus 2. And I told you already that when you are doing completing the square, you are solving for the vertex most of the time. So the vertex, as I told you, is basically the point in the middle in a parabola. And to solve for this, you basically have to set x plus 1 equal to 0, and you have to find out what x is equal to. And here x would be equal to negative 1, right? Because negative 1 plus 1 is 0. So we know that this point would be negative 1. And y is just literally this point. And that is positive 2, so we can just write 2. So our vertex would be negative 1, 2. Now let's go on to our next problem. X squared minus 4x plus 7. Now the only difference between this and the last problem is that there is a negative sign right here. So other than that, it's mostly normal. So the way I would do this, x squared minus 4x. And remember, we need to divide by 2 and then square. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, and negative 2 squared is equal to 4. So it would be plus 4. And then outside the brackets, you do minus 4, and then, actually not outside the brackets, outside the parentheses, because we're still inside these brackets. Now outside the brackets, we added a plus 7. So we would get x minus 2 squared, because you have to do negative 2 times negative 2 to get negative 4. When you are doing the, you get negative 2 and negative 2, and then when you add them together, you get negative 4. When you multiply them together, you get positive 4. So you get that, and then you have the minus 4, and then you have a plus 7, so the answer would be positive 3. And then our vertex, you literally just flip the negative 2, you flip the sign, so that would just be 2, and the positive 3 would just be 3. Sorry, just put parentheses. Okay, so the next one would be 2x squared plus 12x plus 9. And here's where it gets a little more complicated. Here you take out the 2. So it would be 2 times x squared plus 6x. And then just forget about the 9. And now we do the whole thing where we divide by 2 and then we square. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared, not cubed, squared is 9. So it would be plus 9. And then in the brackets, this is where it gets important to write the brackets. In the brackets, we have to write minus 9, and then we write plus 9 here. So you might just think, oh, it just cancels out, right? Because negative 9 plus 9 is 0. You're actually wrong, because what you have to do here, sorry, not this 9, you have to multiply this this 2 to the negative 9. So really, because you have to distribute this whole 2, right? So it would be 2 times x plus 3 squared, because this factor 6 was 3. So you're multiplying this 2 to this, and then we multiply this 2 to this as well. So 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. And then you don't have to distribute the 2 to here because it's outside the brackets. So then plus 9. So our answer would be 2 times x plus 3 squared minus 9. And our vertex would be negative 3, negative 9. Now our next problem, we have 5x squared minus 10x plus 17. Take out the 5. So we get 5x squared. Actually, not 5x squared. We get 5 times x squared minus 2x. And we don't need that plus 17. Let me put the brackets on. And as you remember from the first problem, when you have a plus 2x or a minus 2x, it will be plus 1. Because negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, and negative 1 squared is just 1. And then subtract the 1 from here, and plus 17. So when we rewrite this, we'd have x minus 1 squared when we distribute it, then minus 5 plus 17. So it would be 5 times x minus 1 squared plus 12. So our vertex would be 1 and 12. So in this problem, we have x squared plus 3x minus 4. Now this is where it gets a little confusing, because this is where fractions actually get involved. So here in the parentheses, we would write x squared plus 3x, and then we have to divide by 2. 3 divided by 2 is 3 over 2, and 3 over 2 squared is 9 over 4. So plus 9 over 4. And then we have to do minus 9 over 4. And lastly, outside the brackets, we do minus 4. So then here, it would be x plus 3 over 2, because that's a square root of 9 over 4. Then square that. And then minus 9 over 4, minus 4. And then 4 would become 16 over 4. So our answer would be minus 25 over 4. And our vertex, we just need to flip this to the other side, and that would be negative 3 over 2, negative 25 over 4. Let me make that 2 look a little better. And we have a couple more problems left. We take out the 3 first, because we don't really want that 3 there. So 3 times x squared, I'll put the brackets on, x squared plus 5x. And then now we have to divide by 2, so 5 over 2. And 5 over 2 squared, 25 over 4. So plus 25 over 4. And then we do minus 25 over 4. And we'll first move this over a little bit. And then we'll end the brackets, and we'll do plus 23. So let's factor this out. So first we'll also multiply it out at the same time. So 3 times x plus 5 over 2 squared. And then it would be minus 75 over 4, because 3 times negative 25 over 4 is negative 75 over 4, because 25 times 3 is 75. And then plus 23 over, actually no, just 23. But then we need to change this to be over 4. So we have to multiply 23 by 4, which would be 92. So then our answer would be 3 times x plus 5 over 2 squared, and we would do, let me do the math. It would be plus 17 over 4, I think. Let me do the math. 92 minus 75, 7, and then 1. So 17 over 4. So that would be our answer, and then our vertex would be -5 over 2 and 17 over 4. Yeah, and one thing I forgot to tell you guys, this coefficient here, the 3, it doesn't really matter in the vertex. What the 3 basically does is just in the parabola, instead of it being like wide, like it normally is, it becomes a lot thinner. And then if this ever becomes a fraction, like if it's like 1/2 times x plus 5 over 2, then it would become even wider than the normal x squared. And this would probably be like the 3x squared. Okay, we have one more left, and I'm thinking about doing another problem. Actually, no, this is fine, because I have what I wanted to tell you guys here. So we have 2x squared plus 5x plus 4. So here we could just take out the 2. Here, like, we don't necessarily need to take out the 2, but it makes it much easier to just take it out. So let's do the 2 and then x squared. Actually, I think we do need to take out the 2. I think I'm thinking about a different problem when I'm saying we don't need to take it out, but don't really worry about what I'm saying. So we have to divide 5 over 2 by 2, and when you do that, 5 over 2 over 2, we have to multiply both sides by 1/2, and we would get 5 over 4. And then remember, you have to square 5 over 4, so 5 over 4 all squared, would be 25 over 16. So then you would do, in the brackets, minus 25 over 16. And then let me erase. Then you would just put the plus 4. So finally, you would just do 2 times x plus 5 over 4 squared. And then you would multiply 25 over 16 by 2, which would be minus 50 over 16. Or sorry, let me change that a little bit. It would be, let's simplify this, 25 over 8. And then plus 32 over 8. So our answer would be 2 times x plus 5 over 4 squared. And then you do plus 7 over 8. And then our vertex would just be negative, let me put dot dot, colon, -5 over 4, then 7 over 8. And when you want to make sure that the problem is right, you could just plug in x to see if you get y. But actually, that's not really a great way, because you might want to double check to see if your problem is actually correct. So let me just double check that this whole thing is correct. So if you divide 5 by 2, you get 5 over 2, so that's good. And then the square root of 25 over 16 is 5 over 4. And when you add that, you get 10 over 4, which is equal to 5 over 2. And then you subtract 25 over 16, then add 4. And then it would be 25 over 8, because when you're doing multiplication, it would be, you'd basically just cancel out the 16 and you'd make it an 8, because you're dividing by 2. And then you add 32 over 8, which is what 4 is equal to, and you get 7 over 8. So yeah, this is a good problem, that's right. So I think there we have it. Here's our lesson on completing the square. It's just another way to factor, and it's best to do this if you want to find the vertex of a parabola. It's not really very useful if you want to actually solve for x. And in the next video, we're going to actually find a video. I'm going to make a video to show you how to solve for x on these problems, where you can't really factor in the normal way of just doing like x, 3, 1 or something like that. So I'll show you a different way, which involves a formula. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!